I've grown my own social media marketing agency from $0 to $1 million as a beginner with no experience in niches that most people would describe as saturated. And over the last 6 years, I've watched countless hours of YouTube tutorials from people who say they have agencies but have never built their own. And I've also spent thousands of dollars on useless SMMA courses. So I asked myself, I said, Charlie, if I could start SMMA from scratch as a beginner with no experience, what would be the fastest path to success? And what would be the easiest or best niche to go into? And so today I'm going to reveal 75 of the best and easiest SMMA niches, but I'm also going to give you an entire step-by-step blueprint on how to pick the one that is right for you. Let's get started. All right, so we're here inside the laptop. The first thing I want you to understand is that people think that SMMA can only work in the big niches, right? They think that you have to be in real estate or dental or chiro or solar or roofing or ecom, one of the big household names. The truth is that you don't have to be in a huge, popular niche to grow and scale. I've seen people do it in the weirdest, unique, and wackiest niches possible, so it's entirely possible. So what I actually want to do to sort of frame this conversation before we dive in is give you 75 different niches that you can pick from, okay? 75 proven business categories that you can go in that have a problem with marketing, and you can solve that problem for them there. So if you head over to this Google Doc here, you'll find 75 different niches you can just have a look through. So I want to start by just giving you some action off the rip immediately, okay? I want you to look through this list and write down the ones that jump out to you as interesting or familiar. So you're going to go through these 75 different niches, and if you're still in that niche selection mode, or if you're in a niche and you think that your niche isn't that good and you want to switch, then I want you to just write down a list. I want you to put 5 or more businesses or business categories, pen and paper. Let's take some action off the bat. We'll take some action immediately. And if you want to make a more extensive list, you can actually check this out. Here we've got over 4,000 business categories, right? So really there's no real limit to how many categories of business there is. But if you haven't, if you've gone through 75 niches and you think, oh, I'd like to just look a little bit further afield, well, this is basically the Google My Business categories list, okay? And you've got basically everything here. I mean, for example, if you really wanted to do marketing for adult DVD stores, you could, right? But might be a little bit weird. Maybe you're interested in that. I don't know. I don't even know who buys DVDs anymore, let alone adult ones. But without further ado, obviously in here, you're not going to do marketing for abbeys, right? We're not trying to do advertising for the church or anything. But really, if you look through here, Party Temple, there's going to be some weird ones. But this should give you some inspiration and some ideas. It's a very, very divergent way of thinking. Plenty of different niches for you to pick from. And obviously some of them are weird, like pain control clinic, for example. I don't know how many pain control clinics there are in the world. Most people just take some paracetamol these days, but you never know. Maybe there's loads of them, and maybe that they need help with marketing and there's nobody to serve them. So there's lots of different examples, but the main thing I want you to do off the bat within the first 2 minutes of this video is make a list of 5 different niches that interest you. The key here is interest and familiarity. Something that you might already slightly understand, something that you might be curious about, something that you just think, oh, that looks kind of cool. Make a list. So what we're now going to do is go through the actual checklist of how to select. So before, I've got lots of stuff I'm going to share with you in this video. So much stuff coming up with regards to the best niches, the worst niches, when you should switch niche, like how to deal with saturated niches. I've got this amazing strategy to share with you. You're going to love it. Look at my YouTube retention, aren't I? Am I not good at this? But I'm going to run you through a checklist for actually selecting the niche. So you should now have, at this point, 5 niches. If you're the kind of person that is watching this YouTube video and you haven't taken the liberty to just do that 5 minutes of work I just set you, how the hell are you going to build a business, man? So if you haven't got a list of 5 niches and you're just watching this for theory because you want to learn, as far as I'm concerned, you can leave. Okay, I only want people here who are taking action, who are basically ready to move. Okay, so let's take some action. All right, Imperium niche selection checklist. So this is actually the checklist that I use to pick my niches, or if I was starting an agency, this is exactly how I would do it. It's how I reckon all of my clients do it, etc., etc. So we've got keystone questions and we've got general questions. So the keystone questions are the ones so readily highlighted in orange. All of these must be ticked. If you can't tick all of these boxes for your niches that you've selected or that you've listed out, you cannot run in the niche, okay? So it's very important you understand this. So right now, you got your 5 to 10 niches, and what we're going to do is we're going to use this simple standard operating procedure or simple model to figure out which ones are viable and which ones aren't. So we've got 10 or whatever niches you're interested in. We're going to do this exercise and narrow down the ones that are probably the most applicable. Because the problem I see people doing at the moment, they just fall into a niche by chance. They don't really pick anything. They don't think it through. They don't critically analyze it. They don't even have a list of things they can pick from. They're just like, oh, monkey see, monkey do. A lot of people just fall into the niche because they see an influencer or a friend of theirs doing the same thing and they think, oh, I'll just do that. We want to have good initial conditions. So general questions. All of these don't have to be ticked, but you want to try and tick as many as you can. So this is basically how we qualify whether or not a niche is good. So the checklist is simple. First things first, does the niche need what you're selling? So you've got your list, right? And now we're going to go from item number 1. So maybe at the top of the list, you've got funeral directors, right? Maybe that's what you're interested in for whatever reason, you strange man, strange woman. But you're going to look at that niche and we're going to ask, well, does this niche actually need what you're selling? The thing about funeral directors, staying on topic here, is they probably don't need what you're selling because there's a lot of supply. Okay, I'm going to shut up. So, does the niche need what you're selling? Okay, because here's the thing. If the niche doesn't have a painful problem to solve, they won't purchase from you. Pain drives client acquisition. For example, a client of mine recently went into veterinary practices, but 90% of them didn't need the help getting customers. And it turned out after like 1,000 outreaches that the most common response she was getting to her emails and her cold calls was, I don't need more customers, I need more vets. Right? In the US, there's actually like, it turns out there's actually like a lack of qualified vets. So maybe there's an agency you start, maybe like, you know, I'll teach you how to become a vet, or you go to veterinary practices and you do recruitment for them. This is the thing about the agency space, is you don't have to start a marketing agency. There's so many other like services that you could fulfill. So if there's a fantastic niche with a super painful problem, you can always figure out how to solve it. And your skill set at present shouldn't be a massive concern. Creating your product around your market is a better idea than creating your market around your product. So this is the thing. When you're selecting a niche and when you're selecting an offer, you need to be very careful that you're not biasing yourself, because the market sets the conditions for what works and what wins. You do not. And so when you're building your business and your product and your offer, you want to build that around what the market needs. But if you try to pick a market based on what you already have, you're hugely limiting yourself. The entire trajectory of your business is limited by who you currently are. And you're probably not in the best of places right now in terms of like your skill set, your belief systems, the assets you have psychologically. And so it makes more sense to base your business around your market than yourself, okay? So when you're looking at these niches and you're thinking like, oh, I'd love to work with this type of business, or I'd love to work with this type of business, but I don't know how to solve the problem, that doesn't matter, because skills can be developed. And trust me, it's more important to be in a market that supports business growth and that is growing. You want to fit yourself to the market instead of trying to fit the market to you. Does the market, the people your niche operate in, actually need what the niche is selling? Does the market have pain that can be alleviated? So we asked this question again, but this time about the niche. So for example, if you're in the gym space in America, a lot of people need to go to the gym, right? No offense if you're from America, but it's a fact, right? But at the same time, let's say that you want to go into the niche of, I don't know, like underwater basket weaving is an example that comes to mind for some very strange reason. Does anyone actually need underwater basket weaving advice? Probably not, right? Unless they've got a screw loose. So you don't want to go into that space because, well, it might be interesting to you, but who the hell needs underwater basket weaving? Right. Is the niche growing? Are more businesses or people entering this market and being created, or is the niche shrinking? The market must be expanding for you to have a long-term shot at success. If the market dies, so do you. So the niche needs to be growing. The market needs to be expanding, because if the market is shrinking, you're going to shrink with it. Can this niche afford high ticket prices? Does the niche make enough money to afford high ticket prices? Can they readily invest in value at a high price? To find out if they can, look no further than the prices of your biggest and most successful competitor. For example, cafes. If you're going to help like small artisan cafes in the UK, they don't make that much money. They're not going to be able to pay big retainers or anything like that. Generally speaking, it's probably not a good idea. The next thing is, are you interested in this niche? Because I've got news for you, mate. You're going to be spending thousands of hours, thousands of days in this niche, tens of thousands of hours even, working with these people, solving their problems. Do you actually find it interesting? This is an important question to ask yourself. This is not a keystone question, because you don't need to be interested in it to scale, right? There's lots of people who have businesses that they run and they become very successful without really any interest in what they do at all. But this is probably the most important general question. If you're not interested in the niche, kind of difficult, you're going to struggle a lot. Are there more than 30,000 people in this niche? Is the niche large enough to support growth? Here's the thing, you're going to have big trouble running ads or building any sort of audience if there's only a few hundred people in your niche. This only applies if you want your business to grow beyond 10K a month. So if you actually want to build a real enterprise, you can get to like multi-six figures probably with outbound. But if you want to get to 7 figures and beyond, you're going to have to run ads, you're going to have to build an audience. Well, you can't really run ads if you've got a tiny market, and also you can't really build an audience because there's no one to even look at you. So it's important you understand that there's more than 30,000 people. Once again, it's not essential. I've seen people grow agencies to 80K a month with a person, like a 3,000 person niche, but just consider it, okay? So will you already have competitors in this niche? Contrary to popular belief, competition is actually a good thing because it indicates a sign of life. So imagine being a fish picking a pond to live in? Well, you'd rather pick a pond with other successful fish that are already alive because, well, this is going to indicate that the water isn't toxic and there's plenty of food. So when people are looking at niches, a lot of them are thinking like, oh, I want a niche with no competition. I want a niche where it's a blue ocean and nobody exists. The problem with those niches is like, there's no proof that you can even make it work. There's no example, there's no sign of life. And it's important that, you know, when you're going into a niche that you know that it's possible for it to work. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't necessarily look for niches that have low competition, but I'm saying that it's a pretty imperative thing to look for. Are the offers in this niche realistic for you to compete with after 3 months of work? The thing about this is when you're looking at the offers your competition are making, you can learn how to create services that allow you to offer a similar thing, but it's pretty imperative that it's not irrational, right? So for example, in the done for you e-commerce marketing niche, to get clients, you need to promise a 5x ROAS or a 30% growth in revenue in 30 days. It's got to the point of irrationality, right? It doesn't make sense anymore. And if you're coming into this niche as a complete beginner, you're not going to be able to compete with that. Does this niche give your business a minimal operational drag multiplier? What this means is, can you deliver the same service every time for this niche? For example, in e-commerce, every business is different because it has a different product, requiring different funnels, different ads. I like niches that are repetitive and predictable and have low operational drag. If you sign one client, you can use the same ads and the same copy and the same scripts and the same funnels and the same processes for another client, if that makes sense. We want this operational drag multiplier to be reduced so that when we're scaling, everything's really simple. We have the same support tickets, we have the same onboarding process, the same payment links, etc., etc. So the next one is, can people in this niche be easily found and contacted? Can you quickly and easily find the contact information of the people in this niche in order to reach out to them to explain your offer, right? Pretty important thing. If you're in a niche and it's impossible to find the people you're looking for, you're probably not going to be able to make it work. If B2B, do you care about the impact of the work of the people in this niche? Or does it conflict with your personal morals? If helping businesses or selling a person something, ask whether or not you care about the impact of their work. For example, I loved working with gyms because I knew I was introducing thousands of people to fitness and healthier living. It got me up in the morning. But I've had clients before who go into like the plastic surgery niche and then they realize they don't like Kylie Jenner and they don't want people to be they don't want people to get plastic surgery because they feel like it's, you know, whatever. Now I don't really swing either way on that argument, but the point is that if you're in a niche where you feel like you're doing the wrong thing morally by being in that niche and promoting what that business has to offer, you're probably going to self-sabotage, okay? So just bear that in mind. Does the niche hang out on online social media platforms? Because that way we can use inbound social platforms to get appointments, or outbound. Does the niche have a gatekeeper to screen all outbound contact attempts? A lot of your success in the early days is determined on your ability to get hold of the decision maker through cold email, cold call, cold DM, etc., etc. If you're reaching out to people but you keep finding that they've just got someone in the way, it's a big problem. Do you understand this niche, or could you get to grips with it quickly? And do you speak the language of this niche, or could you get to grips with it quickly? For example, let's say you want to help fintech startups, like financial technology startups. Probably going to take you quite a long time to learn the jargon and the ins and outs of that niche because it's pretty complicated. If you're looking for this checklist, you can go in the description and you'll find the actual how to pick a niche document in there. But what I want you to do is I want you to run through this checklist for all these niches, right? So you've got 5 to 10 that you've selected from this huge array. What we're going to do at this point is basically select. So selection is now very simple. Just pick the one with the most boxes ticked. Okay, it's not difficult. The problem with niche selection is people paralyze themselves. There's no such thing as a perfect niche. They all have their problems, they all have their difficulties, they all have their advantages, they all have their disadvantages. But the biggest disadvantage in your agency is not having a niche. And the biggest disadvantage is wasting time picking one. I'm hoping that in just the first 20 minutes, whatever, of this video, I've been able to solve this problem for you. You've got the checklist. We know which ones are going to be good because we've checklisted this against thousands of agencies that I've observed, and now you're successful, or at least you're set up to be. Just pick. You've got your list, you've got your checkboxes, and you should now know which one's best. So right now, in this moment, here and now, I want you to select your niche. And the problem is you're probably looking at some of the niches and thinking, but Charlie, that niche is too saturated. Well, I've got some news for you. I've got a surprise for you. I'm going to share a strategy that I've used to build my businesses and get clients, regardless of how saturated or populated the niche may be. Because this is the problem. There's one of the biggest mistakes agency owners make when they select a niche is they're looking for the easy niche. They're looking for this, saturated niche. And I know this is true because this is exactly why I've titled the video the way I've titled it, with looking for easy niches and the best niches and stuff. I'm going to share some ideas with you. Let's get into it. You might be thinking, well, I'm not going to go with gyms, or I'm not going to go with this niche because it's saturated. The truth is that whether or not a niche is good or not doesn't matter in any way, shape or form on how many people are in there. Whether or not a niche is good depends on the checklist. Because the thing about saturation is it's always going to exist to a degree. There's always going to be people coming in and out of the niche. So it's a variable that we can't account for. But let's get into it. So an important lesson in critical thinking now applies. Niches cannot saturate. They are not sponges. Niches cannot saturate. For a niche to saturate, all of the businesses in that niche would have to suddenly wake up and have their problem solved overnight. For as long as a problem exists in the market, there is demand. And for as long as there is demand, it is going to be profitable to supply. Because of this, niches do not saturate. This is so important. The saturation myth is one of the biggest psychological belief viruses of this SMMA space. Niches cannot saturate. Like, let's say you're in the gym niche, and then suddenly one morning you wake up and every single gym is now getting members. There's no problem with acquisition for gyms ever. Well, then the niche has become saturated. Because saturation, in my opinion, for a niche is determined by whether or not the problem has already been solved. For example, if you're going to start an e-commerce brand, I would say e-commerce is kind of saturated because Amazon's already solved the problems of the e-commerce space, which is the biggest selection of products at the cheapest price with the fastest shipping. So if you can't come in and compete with that, probably not worth doing. Which is why I didn't start an e-commerce business, which is why I started a business, agency or consulting business. So why do people keep saying this niche is saturated, or why do they run into problems getting clients in heavily populated niches? Well, let me explain. It's going to blow your mind. Offers and stimuli can saturate. So this is where it gets important. We have to learn to differentiate between what a market is and what a position is. So in business, we have a market, which is your niche, and we have a position, which is essentially your offer, right? So the offer is the way your solution to the prospect's problem is positioned against other solutions in your market. Offer is positioning. It's manipulating and influencing the market's perception of your product in a way that is conducive to the decision to buy. Okay? So let me give you an example here. Let's say you go to a mall. There's a bunch of stores and they all sell the same thing. The way the shops position themselves is going to be different. Either the way they've positioned their brand, the way they've positioned their website, their social media, the actual storefront itself, like it looks different to the other shop, if that makes sense. So in business, positions are the things that saturate. If your mind's jumping somewhere dirty, it better not be. But positions, right? Offers, these saturate. The market, if there's a problem, there will always be profitability in supplying that problem and supplying the demand. The way that you go about doing that and the way that your agency is positioned can saturate. Let me explain. So stimuli are tangible, typically digital assets that are shown to humans in your market to elicit a response. For example, cold email copy, follow-up gifts, ad creative, subject lines, YouTube thumbnails. These can also saturate. So we've got offers, which we know is just the way of positioning the business and the product. And by the way, you always position yourself against something else. It's not, you never just stand alone. It's always against like something else. But stimuli are things you use to get clients, right? So cold emails, like if I flash a stimulus to you and you do a response, that's kind of how it works. So the phenomenon of saturation is experienced by agency owners who use the same copy, the same messaging, the same offers, and the same acquisition strategies or processes as all the other agencies in their niche. Niche saturation is the biggest method of cope available to agency owners these days. If their business isn't working, they'll blame the niche instead of blaming their insufficiencies and lack of skills. Do not be one of these people, all right? Maybe up until now, you haven't understood this. And maybe you've been like, oh, my agency isn't growing because the niche is saturated. There's too many people in the niche. It's too overpopulated. It's too overdone. Let me explain this. So in the gym niche, there's about 70,000 gyms, 80,000 gyms maybe now across the US, Canada, and the UK. And Gym Launch, I believe at their peak, had anywhere between like 4,000 to 6,000 clients, they were the biggest gym consulting space. And we were up against them at NorthFlow Consulting, so that was where our agency lied. But here's the thing, the biggest competitor, Gym Launch, this big scary competitor, they only signed 4,000 clients. Out of 80,000 gyms, that's like 5% of the market. This is the beautiful thing about these agency spaces and these consulting spaces, is the markets are so big, our business models cannot scale that aggressively. And for that reason, there can never be monopoly. It can never be like Amazon or like a car company or like a tech company where you're selling something, you know, that scales massively. Like even me, I'm in the agency space, right? And in the last 2 years, I've signed like, I don't know, like 1,200, 1,500 clients maybe. And I know for a fact there's like 50 to 100,000 agency owners. So people who want to compete with me look at me and think, oh, I can't compete with him. But the truth is that I'm not even encapsulating on like 2 to 3 to 5% of the market. And if you want to get to 10 grand a month or even 100 grand a month, usually you only need like 0.01% of the entire market share. There's 100,000 businesses in your niche and you want to get to 10K a month, you only need 10 clients. It's like 0.001%, 0.0001%, whatever it is. Don't worry about saturation. For as long as the niche has a problem that needs to be solved, the niche is viable. Now, let me share with you my strategy to help you deal with saturated offers and saturated positions within niches. This is going to blow your mind. So, populated niche best strategy. Believe it or not, I love niches that have saturated offers and messages. They're my favorite niches to be in. I have a strategy for these niches. And the beautiful thing about this is the more populated these niches are, the better this strategy works. This is the cornerstone of my success. As you've probably observed, there is a distinct lack of critical thinking and differentiation in the SMMA space. Everyone wants the easy copy and pastable route. So we can understand that human nature is very predictable. People want the easy route. They don't want to have to think, they don't want to have to risk, they don't want to have to fear, they just want to be able to come in and copy and paste. And that's why these YouTube videos do so well. Like the videos you see where it's like my cold calling script or the best niche to go into, or this is the best offer. Like people want these shiny objects. They think their entire business is going to be solved by, and sometimes it can be, but let's get into it. So the market has a problem. They want to work with an agency to solve this problem. This is the thing people don't get. If you're in a niche and the businesses in that niche have a genuine painful problem, they want that problem to be solved. And they will happily pay money to have that problem solved. The problem is, how do they know which agency to pick? They all have the same offer, promising the same result, in the same time frame, with the same wording, and they all use the same sales script. They all use the same cold email copy with the same cold call opener. Newsflash, mate, you're not the first person to watch Thomas Gannett's cold calling video. You don't exist on your own. There's tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people just like you who are all jumping to the same conclusions. So when you go and watch Jordan Platten's agency series, shout out to Jordan, by the way. He's much more handsome than me. I quite like him. But when you go and watch his series, starting an agency from scratch that gets 200,000 views a video, and he decides to go into, I don't know which niche he went into, but he decides to go into one niche, you're not the only person that thinks that might be a good idea. Important lesson in critical thinking. You do not exist in a silo. There's hundreds of thousands of people just like you, and if you think a certain way, they're going to think the same way as well. So whether you get clients or not is down to pure luck if you're in this position. And the more populated the niche, the lower the chances are. So let me explain my strategy. This box represents the market, a niche. The red people represent the agencies in the market. As you can see, it's hard to differentiate between them. They all look the same. So if we were to sort of put a magnifying glass or a telescope or whatever on a niche and sort of drill down and observe it, this is what we would see. We would see everyone doing the same thing with the same sort of structure. They look the same because they are the same. They have the same business genetics. Same offer, same messaging, same script, same website, same funnel, same desperate approach. In farming, this is called monoculture. And monoculture is dangerous. It's how famines happen. If you want to understand the dangers of monoculture, just Google what happened in Ireland in 1845. And you'll be educated on the dangers of basically when everything is the same. So in biology, right, you can understand the niche as a market. If you look biologically at how things work, we've got like the environment, which is the niche, and inside of the environment you've got species and you've got organisms. And the same thing works in business, where you've got the environment as a niche, but then the species and the organisms are the businesses that exist inside that niche. If they all have the same strand of DNA, they all have the same genetic code, they're extremely fragile to change. And they're going to be completely ruined. As more and more people gravitate towards the niche, the agencies all merge into one. This is honestly how it works, man. Like at least agencies that are simply copy and paste replicas of other agencies in that niche. So what we can see here is we've got, some people in this niche, they all look pretty similar. But then if we double up on that, it's even worse. But this is good. The larger the sea of red, the more you can stand out by being different. If you can critically think and position yourself slightly differently, you can stand out even more. Notice how we have a magenta man over here. This is an agency that might be very similar, if anything, to all the red people, but is slightly different because the market is so crowded, he stands out even more. Everyone's red. If you're red, you're going to do what everybody else is doing, get what everyone else has. It's not going to work. But if you're still red, but a slightly different shade of red, you stand out. Now, look at the difference. Let's say this is a saturation, there's 10,000 agencies in the niche. But then here it says 20,000 agencies in the niche. What you'll notice is there's a contrast here where Magenta Man, you can kind of distinguish him from the red here. If I zoom in, you can kind of distinguish him from the red. He looks like a slightly different shade. But the more people that pile into the niche, the more different this person looks. Differentiation, it gets better with the scale of the niche, if that makes sense. So you can, the more saturated your niche and the more populated the niche, the less different you have to be to seem different. Does that make sense? And that's amplified, hopefully, by my terrible drawing here. But my point is that here, the niche is obviously quite populated, so you can be different and stand out. But here, the niche is really populated, but just by being the same level of difference, you stand out even more because there's now a point of contrast. So look how, if we double the number of similar agencies in the market, the magenta man stands out even more. Examples of being a magenta man, like Sigma man. You want to be a magenta man. It's going to become like a meme or something. It probably won't become a meme. I'm not actually that cool. But examples of being a magenta man, simply rewording the approach you use that you learned from a popular YouTuber, or making small minor changes to improve an offer. Let's say that you've seen Thomas Gannett's famous cold calling video. It's like 600k views. His cold call opener is, hey, my name's Thomas, this is a cold call, would you like to hang up now or give me 30 seconds and then decide? Newsflash, Thomas actually got that from me, and I actually got that from someone else, so I can't lay credit to that, unfortunately. But here's the thing. It's out in the open. 600,000 people have seen that message. A lot of whom are going to be in your niche trying to sell to the same people. For example, instead of saying, this is a cold call, would you like to hang up now or give me 30 seconds and then decide? To be a magenta man would be to say, I got to be honest, my mum told me not to lie, I'm cold calling you. Now, would you rather put the phone down or hear my incredible sales pitch? You're saying the same thing, but just slightly differently. So this is what it means to be magenta in a sea of red. It's along the same lines, and you're basically saying the same words and you're asking in the same way. You've tweaked it ever so slightly. And the more saturated the niche and the more populated the niche, the less of a tweak you need to have to seem different. So let's say right now that everyone in your niche is offering, like in the gym niche, 30 to 90 members in the next 30 days. Or maybe you just offer 31 to 92 members in the next 29 days. It might seem weird and abstract, but this is how you gain advantage, and this is how you start to look different. If you're a business in this niche and you're looking for an agency, who are you going to pick? Because the thing is you can't differentiate between this sea of red. Everyone looks the same. So when you're over here and you look slightly different, you think, oh, he looks different, I'll pick him. By the way, this works in terms of business. It also works in terms of dating as well, right? Now, I'm not going to sit here and try and give you any sort of lecture on dating, but the point is true. If every guy looks the same and they're all behaving in the same way and doing the same thing and whatever, and they all look the same, and then a girl comes along and she's like, who do I want? It's not about being better than people. It's about positioning yourself slightly differently so you actually get their attention. Because most of the time it's just about getting their attention. If you can get their attention, and I'm not talking about dating anymore, I'm talking about business, right? I'm gonna veer away from that dangerous category of speech. Just by standing out, you get their attention, you seem different, then you have the advantage of being able to close them because they're actually on a call with you. Now, my strategy is to take this one step further and to do a complete 180. The strategy I've used to grow my business, Imperium Acquisition, is what I call a complete 180. This is where you look at the market and do the complete opposite to them. A prime example of this is my YouTube description and the start of the pitch video in the funnel from the description. In the description of all my YouTube videos is a link to buy my thing. This is not a pitch, right? But if you read the description and you look at how I've positioned the funnel, and then you click on the link and you go and watch the funnel and listen to the first 15 seconds, it's literally the polar opposite of what everybody else does. Because if you go and watch any other business influencer online trying to sell their product, in their description, it's going to be like, want to get X amount of clients, or find my secret strategy, or join my email list. I just literally say, I hate funnels just as much as you do, but if you want to check it out, check it out. And then the way I position the funnel, and by the way, I will be very much doing this at the end of the video, is I just say, if you want to buy my thing, there's a link in the description. I don't care if you click it or not, and that's the truth. So anyway, enough about that. It's just an example. Some more examples. I noticed the market was offering timid guarantees, so I decided to offer 20 clients. Now, you can only do this with a good product. I noticed the market was obsessed with quantity, volume, and software with outbound. So I handcrafted personalized looms and sent them to prospects. I noticed my market was focused on ads, so I focused on YouTube. I noticed my market was focused on marketing, so I focused on my product. I noticed my market was blindly pitching people in cold DMs, so my strategy for cold DMs was to ask for permission first. I noticed my market was too afraid to use Trustpilot, so I started a Trustpilot and got 400 5-star reviews, and if you want to go and check them out, there's some funny 1-star reviews. One of them broke my heart. Someone wrote a pretty damaging statement about the state of my genitals, which was quite upsetting, but you can go and probably see it if you want. Maybe not that you'd want to, but it was very strange, very weird. Obviously not true, right? But anyway, so you get the point, right? When I came into this business and this niche two and a half years ago, I took a look at the market and I sat back with Bo, my business partner, and I was like, what's everyone doing? And we were like, well, they're all focused on quantity-based cold emails. They're just blindly pitching people in DMs. They don't want to use Trustpilot because they're afraid of what their customers will say. They're all focused on marketing and running ads, and their products haven't been given much thought. Their guarantees are timid and quite shy and quite afraid. And we were like, well, okay, well, how do we position ourselves differently? Let's just do the polar opposite of what everybody else has done. And that's exactly what we did. And so the 180 strategy, as I call it, allows you to be blue when there's a sea of red. So instead of looking for a blue ocean niche, because this is the thing, blue ocean niche, if you're not familiar, basically means like you're in a niche or a market where there's no competition, there's no competitors, right? Instead of doing that, I prefer to look for blue ocean positioning. By being blue in a red ocean, you achieve the same result than by being red in a blue ocean. So it's a lot easier to be blue in a red ocean than it is to be red in a blue ocean. Because if you're coming into a niche where no one exists, the chances of you finding success in that niche are very slim because there's no proof of concept. There's nothing for you to model off of. The problem with blue ocean niches, which are niches with no one to compete in, is they're not proven, they're dangerous. Imagine being in a pond, there's a fish, there's probably a reason why there's no fish in there, they're all dead, right? That might not make sense, but you should get the point. You probably don't yet have the ability to become a blue man, but you can take a good crack at being magenta. This is my strategy, and the only reason I'm able to do this is because I've got quite a lot of experience under my belt, and I've been running businesses and I'm doing this for like 7 years, so 8 years nearly, so I'm coming up to a decade of experience, right? So it's easier for me to come in here and look at this swarm of red and be like, all right, I'll just be blue, mate, because I can actually do that. For a lot of people, just by being magenta and slightly different, if we zoom in here, you can see he's not that different. He's not doing something completely wild and completely different, but he's just added his own twist, his own spin. Maybe he's made a joke in his cold email instead of just the heartless thing he usually sends. Instead of doing it through like the website on the Loom, when you have like a Loom, there's like a thumbnail. Instead of having the website, maybe you just have the LinkedIn profile. Maybe, you actually make a custom thumbnail inside of Canva. Just saying, click this video, John Sparrow, whatever your name is, right? Don't know where John Sparrow came from, but you get the point. So that's how to deal with a saturated niche, but I've got more for you. There are more things coming to your way. The biggest niche selection mistakes. Charlie Munger famously says, or probably not very famously, because you probably don't know who he is or what he said, all I want to know in life is where I'm going to die so I don't go there. And what this basically means, I would rather avoid making mistakes than trying to know what the right thing to do is. What we want to do is avoid making these mistakes. So when you're selecting your niche, you want to avoid crowd-based selection. The biggest mistake I see new agency owners make is picking a niche based on the decisions of other people. If a big SMMA YouTuber claims a certain niche is best, it immediately becomes the worst. Prime example, med spa niche. Thomas Gannett comes on the scene, starts making videos. He's like, I'm doing this amount of money. By the way, I'm in the med spa niche. He doesn't tell people to join the med spa niche. Oh no, Thomas doesn't even want that to happen. But just by monkey see, monkey do, people are like, oh, Thomas is in the med spa niche, so it must work. And then they forget that there's hundreds of thousands of people or tens of thousands of people watching these videos who are going to jump to the exact same conclusion. And then they're like, oh, my agency's not working. It's like almost as many agencies as there are med spas. Now, I don't know what the med spa place is like, because I actually have clients now in the med spa niche that are getting results and getting appointments. So I think it's kind of going back to normal a little bit. But there was a time, Thomas even made a video on it where the med spa niche was completely ruined. And the same thing is true with anyone who makes a series on like starting an SMMA from scratch. Anytime a big SMMA YouTuber says, this is the best niche, it immediately becomes the worst niche, because suddenly you get this stupid influx, this completely irrational influx of supply into the market, and demand becomes a problem. Now, if you know how to be a magenta man and, have funk music playing whilst you're in the shower, then maybe you stand a chance. But generally speaking, you're going to be in some trouble. This is the paradox of niche selection advice. What is best now no longer is the best when it's shared with the entire market. It's also why I'm not going to recommend one specific niche in this video. Be irresponsible of me. You'd be lucky if I sat here and said, yes, this is the best niche. Within a week, it would no longer be the best niche. Sure, I could do that, but it wouldn't make any sense. It wouldn't help you. It would, if anything, it would do you way more harm than good, because you'd be like, okay, Charlie said need to go into that niche, so I'll go into the niche. And you'd go into it alongside every other idiot that watched the video, and then before you know it, the niche doesn't work anymore. It's the same thing with cold email. These shiny videos that give you tangible examples of what to do or exactly what to say or where to go stop working as soon as they're posted. Bear that in mind. This is why I've never made a video giving you a specific piece of copy or a specific thing. I could have done it, and I could have got hundreds of thousands of views by doing it, but I'm doing the wrong thing by you, because as soon as I give you like the cold messaging template and then that is released to like 10, 20,000 people, it stops working. So I would rather teach you how to think, which is why I'm giving you a checklist to think for yourself, so that we can have what is called emergence, right? Emergence is basically a phenomenon in nature. The environment sets the conditions for survival, and then from that, from those conditions, different variables and different variants of genetic code emerge. And that's how strength is built, and that's how a species becomes anti-fragile, because then we have variation, we have adaptability, and that's exactly what I'm trying to create with this YouTube channel, okay? Solo-based selection. The other end of this spectrum is looking for a niche where no other agency exists. This can work, but on a specific condition. So let me give you some examples of some niches you've probably never heard of or considered. Land clearing niche, yacht broker niche, interior design niche, Pilates studios, wellness retreats, painters, right? These are all niches that nobody's ever talked about before. But there's businesses that have a problem with client acquisition in them. But the problem is that there's not enough agencies in there to have proof of concept. Notice how I've given you like 5 or 6. If I just gave one, everyone would hop into the one. So niches like these are better tackled when you have experience under your belt. This is because there are very few proven strategies for acquisition or retention. So like it or not, when you are a new agency owner, you are heavily reliant upon your competitors for inspiration on what works. If you want to know what cold calling works best, or if you want to know what service delivery works best, you're probably just going to look as far as your competitors' ads or your competitors' funnels, or your clients, the competitors' clients, right? But the major niches that have been tried and proven, you can look for your competitors and see what they're doing. Let me give you an example. A client of mine, and I'm not going to mention his name for obvious reasons, he got to 10 grand a month with ecom, and then he was like, Charlie, I hate ecom. And I was like, okay, you've earned the right to switch. So then he switched into a niche that only has 3,000 businesses. It's the most obscure, I'm not going to tell you which one because it would completely ruin his business, but he's in a complete blue ocean. And now he makes 80 grand a month after 6 months. He's the only person in this niche, and he's cracked the code. But that would not have been possible if he didn't learn the generic skills that he would have required to do it properly in an easier niche first. So what you want to do, if you're looking at like building an agency and you want to go into like a weird obscure niche, pick a proven one first. Pick one that is populated, but you know for sure works. Get it to 10 grand a month, learn all the skills required to book appointments, close clients, onboard clients, deliver results, keep clients, and build the business. And then once you develop those skills in a populated niche, you can then go to an unpopulated niche or a bluer ocean with a different level of skill set. Because the problem is like these solo-based selection niches are great, but they're way more challenging because there's no shoulder to lean on. There's no mentor, there's no competition that you can rely on to help you understand what you need to do. You're completely blind. But if you come into this having already built a successful agency to some degree before, you're gonna be way better. This is exactly what I do, is I'd pick a generic niche, I'd battle it out and get to 6 figures. And then if I was really sick of that niche, I'd find an untapped niche and give it a go, because by that time I'm a different person, capable of solving different problems, thinking properly, etc., okay? So now let's talk about migration and exodus, okay? So you know how like in Africa or wherever the hell these things exist, herds of animals will migrate from plane to plane. So a herd will basically herd an area of land abundant in grass, and then when the grass runs out, they'll migrate to somewhere else that has grass. And then when that grass runs out, they'll migrate again, and then again and again, until they eventually end up probably maybe back where they started. The SMMA space works the same, but with niches. Let me hop into Miro to demonstrate. Look at this. So right now, let's say, we've got this niche here, which is super saturated. Like it's super populated to a degree. This could be like the med spa niche, for example. In fact, I can give you an exact example here. This is the med spa niche, for example, right? This is after the rise of Thomas Gannett, tens of thousands of people suddenly go into the med spa niche, and it becomes completely saturated, right? And then over here, we have an agency owner, maybe a YouTuber. Let's take Jordan Platten's series, for example, right? Great series. And he goes into, I can't remember which niche he went into, but he goes into a niche. And then he makes a video, and then suddenly like hundreds of thousands of people view it. Like what happens is he's like, oh, I just signed 10 clients in this niche. It's way easier than med spas. And then what starts to happen here is we start to see a little bit of migration. Some people in the med spa niche, they come over to the new niche, and then they're like, oh my God, this is way easier than I thought. And then they start telling people in this niche. And then what happens before you know it is like half the niche is just completely migrated over here. We've left a few heads behind, but I'm sure you can forgive the simplicity of this example. And then what happens is like, because this niche is still blue and there's still lots of opportunity, these people will then start screaming, oh my God, I'm making all this money, I'm making all this money. And then even more people from this niche come back over into here. It kind of levels out and there's some rationality, right? And then what happens is we get this sort of thing where now what used to be a good niche is now completely just ruined because of all these people. And so what happens is another niche comes along, and then, let's just do this. And then a couple of people from the recent niche are like, you know what, screw this is too difficult, it's too saturated. And then they come along over into here. And then what happens is, they come along and they're like, oh my God, this niche is way easier than this last one. Well, you kind of guessed it. What happens is, a load of people in this niche are like, oh my God, like monkey see, monkey do. I want an easy life. I don't want to think critically, and I want to just follow the crowd. And then they just come over here. So this starts to happen where like there's a very easily influenced portion of the market. 75, 60, 70, 80% of the market, in terms of agency owners, work and behave and think like this. And what happens here is with these niches is the people that stay and stick to the niche in spite of this stupid, exodus and influx of people, they get results and they stay. And this happened, the primary example of this happened with e-commerce. There was the e-com niche, right, over here. And what happened is we had people over here. You've got Iman Gadji, you've got Kai Bax, you've got Jaime Higuera, and a bunch of other people in the e-com niche, right? This is a good few years ago now. E-com niche, very shiny. And these guys start selling 997 courses on how to start a e-commerce agency. Hey, buy my course, and then suddenly you'll have a Rolex and 15 girlfriends, and your life's going to be amazing. And so they start selling these courses, and everyone's like looking at them thinking, oh my God, that looks amazing. Lo and behold, what happens? Well, the monkeys, right, they simply migrate. And then what happens is they reproduce. This is what happens. They tell their friends, and then they start posting on Instagram about their success in the e-commerce space. And then before you know it, this has happened, right? And this was basically the case about 18 months ago, more even that, like a year ago, where the e-com niche was completely ruined. And then, like, what happens is Thomas Gunay comes along and is like, hey guys, the med spa niche is pretty good. And like, someone else comes along and they're like, oh my God, like the solar niche is great. And then, bam, over they go. And so now, the e-commerce niche is maybe a good niche because like there's nobody in here anymore. Like everyone's died. Like I don't see anyone starting e-commerce agencies these days. They're all starting med spa, roofing, solar, real estate. When you can learn, and I'm lucky enough to have the position of the perch to look down on the market and to not be involved in it because I'm consulting now for agency owners. This is how it works. There is a mass migration of agencies to these different niches, and it creates this huge problem of population and offer saturation, message saturation, and then we have this huge exodus out of the niche into another niche, which then the exact same problem persists, and then the same thing happens again, and we just see this migration from different niches. And this was the case. I watched this happen like 12 months ago. I even made like a video on it. I predicted this. If we come here, let me do Charlie Morgan e-com. I actually predicted this 2 years ago, right? This mass migration out of e-commerce. This niche, this video here, which I posted 2 years ago, it only got like 1,700 views. But in this video, I was basically just explaining like the whole premise of this migration and what was going to happen. And I managed to predict it was going to happen. And so I saw this and I was like, and then I was able to advise my clients. And I was like, guys, for those of you in the e-com niche, you're about to experience a huge withdrawal of market, right? And so anyway, that was kind of interesting for me. Now that you understand all of that stuff, I want to make a vow with you. I want you to marry me, right? Not literally, but I want you to marry your niche. This is called the 10K a month marriage. This is a very, very important part of this video. Now you've picked your niche, and now you understand the nature of all these things that happen with niches. I want you to make an agreement to stick to your niche until you get to $10,000 a month. If you want to switch after that, then go ahead. As far as I'm concerned, once you've selected your niche, you're married to it, at least until you get to 10K a month. I don't care what excuse you come up with, do not switch. So let's say you're in a relationship with someone for 3 years and then you decide to get married to them. 3 months into the marriage, you realize they've actually got a really bad habit of picking their nose. Whenever they eat broccoli, they absolutely stink. Now, you're not going to divorce someone because of that. It's not a very nice problem. Maybe they like broccoli and maybe they like picking their nose, but you're probably not going to be like, oh, I'm going to divorce you because of that. The same thing is true with niches. At the beginning, you kind of fall in love with your niche and you have this honeymoon period, and then you start to realize all the problems that come with being with this bloody niche. You need to make an agreement with yourself now not to switch. Because if you don't have this expectation and condition set from the very genesis of your business, you're going to make a huge mistake where you're going to come in and you're going to go through this for 3 months and then you're going to switch niche. And the worst kind of people in this SMMA space are chronic niche switchers. And these are the kind of people that if they marry someone, within 3 months they get divorced, and another 6 months goes by, they marry someone else, and then another year goes by and they divorce the person and they marry another person. They don't achieve anything substantial or meaningful because they just constantly switch. Repeat after me. And to drill this point home comedically, I'm going to read every single line of this text so you understand it. Repeat, and I want you to actually say this. I know you're going to seem weird. Maybe you're watching this at 2 a.m, you're all alone with your phone on in bed. I want you to actually say this. I will not switch niche before I get to $10,000 a month. Now you say it. Thank you. I will not switch niche before I get to $10,000 a month. I will not switch niche before I get to $10,000 a month. I will not switch niche before I get to $10,000. I'm not actually going to repeat myself, but I want you to actually say this to yourself like 10 times. Expectations set, do not switch niche. Your niche is going to test you. It's going to be like a marriage. It's going to be like a partner. There's going to be things about them that you learn that you don't like, that you didn't know before. It's going to be difficult. It's going to have problems and it's going to be hard. Expect this. But every niche will test you. Every niche is difficult, every niche has problems, and every niche is going to be hard. If you switch niche because your current niche is too difficult, well, my friend, you are an idiot. Okay, I'm going to explain why. I'm not just going to sit here and insult people without giving some sort of critical reasoning. I don't respect anyone that switches niche constantly. I don't respect anyone that can't stick to a niche for like at least a year, or at least till they get to 10 grand a month. I have clients come to me all the time. They give me this whole sob story about why their life sucks, and then why the reason their life sucks is because of the niche. And then they're like, should I switch? And I'm like, no. Because the thing is all the problems exist because of you. Because you lack the skills, you're insufficient, your belief systems, your character, you need to solve the problems as opposed to just trying to run away from the niche, okay? So niche depth understanding. Here's the thing, the more time you spend in your niche, the deeper you understand it. Picking the niche is the easy part, sticking to it is the hard part. The longer you stick with your niche, the deeper your understanding of it becomes. Here's the truth, if there is an agency in your niche currently making as much money as you want, you can as well. Let's say that you are in the solar niche and two of your friends have recently gone into the real estate niche and you've been in the solar niche for 3 months and they've been in the real estate niche for 2 weeks. And then suddenly both of your friends start signing clients. And you're like, oh my God, I should probably go into the real estate niche. Do not be an idiot. Do not be an idiot. Stick to what you've planned. Stick to your niche. There's a reason the checklist adds up. You're going to be fine. Do not, if anything, just completely shut them out. But here's the thing. If you're in the solar niche and you want to make 50 grand a month, if there's another agency in your niche that makes 50 grand a month, it is possible for you to make 50 grand a month. If you're in the underwater basket weaving niche, which by the way, I wouldn't recommend you go into, but if you're in there and there's another agency there making 10 grand a month, it's possible to get to 10 grand a month. There is evidence. There are signs of life. It's possible to do it. And that means there's no excuse. That means there's no excuse. Problems are solvable, you have to know how. Switching a niche is like switching business, it resets all of your progress back to zero, and that's not a good idea. Problems take time to solve, they take pain, they take suffering. When you have a niche-related problem, don't try and fix it by running away, fix it by staring the snake in the eyes and get to work. So this happened to me. When you want to switch is when you're in the most pain, and ironically, when you're in the most pain is when you're probably about to have some sort of big breakthrough. I was in the gym niche to start. It was the agency that I ran for ages. It was the niche I stuck to and got to 100 grand a month. Now, I once considered switching because I couldn't figure out how to get the leads I generated to actually show up for an appointment. So the problem that plagued my business for basically like 3 to 6 months, really. I'd be able to get leads for the gym, but then I wouldn't be able to get those leads to actually show up for the appointment they booked. Or I wouldn't be able to get them to book an appointment. And I faced this problem and it was just so persistent. And I was like, oh, I'm going to switch. I actually started looking into starting an e-com agency and switching it. I've even bought a course on how to start an e-commerce agency because I was like, I can't be dealing with this problem. It must just be the lead generation space. I'm going to go and work with e-commerce because there's no leads. Then I realized I was being an idiot and stopped making that change. But this is what happens. Like I realized, I looked at the market and I was like, are there gym agencies out here that have solved this problem? Are there gym agencies out there that are able to keep clients for like a year who have got to like 100 grand a month and don't suffer with this problem? And I looked and I was like, yes, there are. And I was like, so there must be a solution. And this is why you want to start in a niche that is considered popular, because it's possible. If you go into a niche where nobody else is there, Himalayan meditation wellness retreats, I don't know, right, whatever, right? Don't know why that came to mind. But if you go in there, you've got no reassurance that what you're going to try and do is actually going to work. So it gets kind of dangerous. So then I built the golden follow-up process and fixed the problem. And 6 months later, I was at 100 grand a month. So this is actually the solution to that problem, by the way. If you need any help, you can find this. My slightly more exposed hairline, which always makes me sad. You can go in there and you can see how I solved the problem. I built this process, or Bo, actually my business partner, basically built the process. So I can't really lay claim to it. But this was how we fixed the issue. And so my point here is that like it is easier to fix the problem in the niche you're in now than it is to switch niche entirely and try and solve all the problems again from scratch. Let me explain further. So here's the thing. You have to pick your niche, pick the problem you're going to solve, and pick the solution you're going to give to solve that problem. What happens here is you have this exponential depth of understanding. So I like to look at this as a depth. So we have niche, problem, and solution. And basically what happens is the more time that you spend in this niche, it's time going down here, the deeper your understanding becomes. And what you can observe about this graph is if we flipped it on its head, is it's exponential, right? You can notice how like it takes a long time, and then suddenly we have this massive exponential decrease. Basically, the best niche is the one that you've been in for a long time. The worst niche is the niche you just picked. And I'm going to explain this here. If you want to know what the best niche is, it's the one that you stuck to. And if you want to know what the worst niche is, it's the one that you've just picked. That is the answer to the question. What is the best niche? What is the worst niche? The worst niche is the one that you've just got into. because you've got all these problems, these hurdles to solve. And the best niche is the one that you've been in for a long, long time. Niches are not good or bad. They're all terrible at the start, but get better as you learn to understand them. Now, I can give you an example here. Like, if I wrote every single big niche on a piece of paper and blue tacked them to this wall and took a dart and closed my eyes and threw that dart at the wall, I could grow an agency in any of those niches to 100 grand a month. It is possible. You have to learn to recognize patterns of possibility. If someone else can do it, then you can as well. Because the problem exists and it's probably not as hard to solve as you think. It doesn't really matter what niche you pick. The problem with this is that the success of your business depends on you, not your niche. And so when we look at people that are successful and people that aren't, the common denominator is never niche, it's always character. So with that said, I am going to give you a couple of bad niches that I'm going to warn you away from. The first one is dental. For beginners, this isn't that great because cold acquisition is simply kind of too difficult because you've got so many gatekeepers. You can't really cold call to get the clients, and you can't really cold email to get the clients because the cold calls go to a gatekeeper because the dentists are actually seeing patients. And the cold emails, they're usually going to go to the receptionist, and the receptionist usually just deletes them. That problem can be solved. There's ways around it, but generally speaking, you don't want to veer in that direction at the beginning. E-commerce. In my opinion, service delivery is simply too hard for beginners. You might disagree, but for me, I would stay away from e-commerce as a beginner as well. Lawyer. I've never seen the lawyer niche work. I've observed it for over 1,000 agencies. I've seen some people go into the law niche, and there are some people that are able to pull through and be successful, but it's very, very difficult, okay? So just be careful with that. I'll give you an example of this. One of my sales reps is a guy called Oscar, one of the most talented people I've ever met in terms of sales, in terms of persuasion, in terms of persistence, in terms of character. He's just brilliant, right? Oscar was in the law niche for like 18 months. He was slugging it out. He sent like 25,000 cold emails. He sent like 10, 20, 30,000 cold DMs. He made cold calls every day, but it didn't work. And I was like, listen, mate, this is something I value. Come and do some work for me. Start doing appointment setting and sales for me. And now he makes a ton of money, right? So there is an example of this where like sometimes it's the niche, not the person, but usually it's the person. Any niche that is popularized by a YouTuber or a video is a bad niche. Any niche that sells dollars for hours is a bad niche. So therapists and personal trainers are bad niches because, well, they sell dollars for hours. So if you're working with a therapist and they've only got room for like 20 more hours of work a week and you give them that 20 hours, they can't scale, they can't keep you, they're going to fire you. I'm going to leave you with a quote from Warren Buffett in closing. It doesn't matter how hard you row, it matters what boat you are in. A niche is a vehicle for the success of your business. And if you don't pick the right one, and if you don't heed my advice throughout this entire video, you're going to really harm yourself and do some damage. So just keep that in mind. It doesn't matter how hard you row, it matters what boat you're in. And I'm hoping that by giving you this video and sharing these ideas with you, you're able to pick a pretty damn good boat so that you can row as hard as you can and actually achieve some results and make some money. If you need help getting clients, there is a link in the description. It's a video of me trying to sell you something for full transparency. If you don't trust me or you don't like me, don't click the link because you're probably not going to buy anything. Have a wonderful day and I will see you in the next video.